All right. Hey, Martha. Thank you for joining Borders Optional. I know this has been a long time coming. We've been trying to do this for a couple months now.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Martha. Some people also call me Pooja. My spiritual name is Pooja. I'm currently in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, my hometown, my college town. And I just moved back after being in Argentina for a couple years. And I'm a remote speech language pathology assistant. I used to be a school teacher. I ended up just getting really burned out being a teacher.
Okay.
At one point, I had more than 400 students on my that I saw per week, basically. And I looked into speech therapy and found that some states have an assistant. So you can go for one more year of school in the US in those states and get certified. So that's what I decided to do. Okay. I actually was a traveling speech therapist, so speech language pathology assistant, so providing speech therapy sessions in the homes of different, for mainly kids, but some adults. So I was going from home to home in Phoenix, and it was really not ideal because it required a lot of driving all around the city. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, and all of my work went online. And then ever since, I've just tried to keep it online. I've kind of lived all over, yeah, throughout my adult life. I was in Peru after college many years ago for 6 months. And then I moved to Arizona, and then to New Mexico, and to Hawaii, and then back to Arizona, and then to Argentina, and now back to the US, to South Dakota.
So what were you explaining?
Just, yeah, so I used to work in person doing speech therapy, and during the pandemic, all my work went online. And so I've just tried to keep my work online ever since.
All right. And then
Because
you were previously you were saying that you went to Peru after college. Is that right?
I did, yes.
How did you choose Peru?
I initially applied for the Peace Corps
Okay.
and I got invited to Guyana. And I started dating someone at the time and was somewhat like attached to him. So I didn't want to commit to 2 years and 3 months, which is the Peace Corps in the US commitment. So I was looking for a volunteer opportunity that was 6 months. And in Peru, they have a lot of nonprofit groups. So it was really easy to find a nonprofit. So I applied to a position as an international volunteer coordinator at a nonprofit, and I got accepted.
Okay. What other countries have you been to?
I lived in Merida, Mexico for just a month doing an intensive Spanish program when I was really young, when I was 19. And then I visited Costa Rica as well.
All right. So which one out of the three have you liked the most?
Gosh, they all are beautiful. I really like Costa Rica probably the
Why is
most.
that?
It has a lot of nature, a lot of beautiful, like jungle climate. It's very high vibrational too. When you eat the fresh fruit there, you feel like almost like a high from the energy of the place. Yeah.
All right. So when you are traveling, do you handle most of your visas yourself, or do you have like an agency doing it for you?
I just do it myself.
All right. And do you just typically go to their government website, um, or do you use like a third party company and you put your information in and they just give you your visa?
Good question. For me, at the time in Peru, they were allowing people to be there on a tourism visa for 6 months. I don't remember my process, to be honest. I might have just entered the country and they gave it to me automatically. That's also what they did in the other countries I visited.
Hmm.
I didn't need to do a separate application process. They just gave me a certain amount of time in the country as a tourist. Although in Argentina, I overstayed my visa for a really long time and I didn't have any consequences, fortunately. I just had to pay a small fee
Okay.
when I left the country.
Yeah, I have heard that there's some countries where if you tend to overstay, it's not anything huge. It's just a small fine, either paying the fine or just extending your visa if you can. But yeah, I went to India a couple of years ago, and m my visa, the way I did my visa was I just went on to a website that's like global something, and I just put in my information. I gave them my passport, and um, they like within I want to say like 3 days, I was automatically approved for my visa. And then I went to Bali back in February, and all I did was I just applied from their government website and went through them. But yeah,
Oh, awesome.
everything was super easy either way. But I, I tend to ask that because I'm curious how other people have done their visas, especially ones that travel a lot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Have you ever had um, a culture shock, and like which country did you have your biggest culture shock?
Well, that's a good one. Culture shock. Let's see. Probably Peru. In Peru, I was in a small town in the mountains and called Huaraz, spelled with an H. Um, just seeing really elderly people working, plowing up the sides of mountains because it's up in the Andes Mountains. I remember meeting people who looked like they were maybe in their 70s, maybe even 80s, still doing physical manual labor, like plowing with animals, going up mountains like this steep.
Wow.
So that was big culture shock. And then having a bunch of herbs and plants that they would carry on llamas and bring back down to sell. So just that lifestyle was really interesting to witness.
Yeah, I when I was in Bali, it wasn't necessarily a big culture shock, but for me it was interesting because here, when students are learning a new language like in school, like it is optional, and but like there's not really any activity to do outside of school to like keep learning or to learn more about the language. And you're typically just in the classroom. But when I was in Bali, there was like a group of students. I believe they were in high school, but they were out on the beach and they were walking around for a class assignment, and they were interviewing people that speak English for their English class to kind of learn more about our culture. And they were asking like how to say certain things. Um, and so I thought that was very interesting because you don't see that here in the US. It's not like that. There's no teachers don't give you projects to keep learning the language. So that was very interesting to see.
That is, yeah. What part of the US are you in?
I'm currently in Missouri.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
right in a tornado alley.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely weather's been super crazy this year. We
Yeah.
just had oh like four severe storms come through in like a week span. And it was like we had flooding, like massive flooding everywhere. Um, we had tornadoes come through, but it is tornado season, so not really too much anything different, but it's definitely been more severe weather this year than I've noticed in the other years. So that's been
Wow.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is crazy for sure.
Yeah. Um, while you've been traveling, has there ever been a time that you wanted to give up and just come back to the US?
Yes, I kind of did in Argentina. I was really sick in Argentina, and I kept having difficulty finding my own housing. So I was sharing a really tiny apartment with my boyfriend at the time, like super tiny. And I wanted a little more space, but I kept getting scammed. And I just reached a point where between that and me just feeling like sick and like I couldn't find a peaceful place to figure out what was going on with my body, um, I was like, okay, I have to go back to the US at least to heal my body. So that's why I'm here. I don't know if I'll be back in the US forever. I still have an adventurous spirit and I still want to go explore. But at least for now, it's been nice to be able to get some rest and find a good functional medicine doctor to figure some things out.
Yeah. Did you ever did you ever make a financial mistake while being abroad?
Financial mistake. Other than, I mean, I guess there's scams, but you can't really help scams. You know, it's like you don't know better. Looking back, I realized I was too trusting. I learned in Argentina to be more kind of untrusting. Um, and it's tough because I think immigrants get targeted a bit more, or foreigners, unfortunately, because we're easier targets for people who want to scam or rob. So I didn't want to be hyper paranoid or hyper vigilant because I don't think that's healthy. But at the same time, I remember I got in a marketing scam. The business wasn't even real. The woman, I met her in person, but her business wasn't real. So she was just like faking the whole time. And I knew her for like months, which was really weird because I was trying to start a business in the small town where I was living in San Rafael, Argentina, for the first year and a half. And it took me the longest time to figure out that it was a scam because she just kept it going for so long. And I remember the police lecturing me saying, like, you're in Argentina now. You can't be so trusting, you know?
Wow.
And I was like, okay. Yeah.
So, being in Argentina, is it more common to get scammed there than the other countries you have been to?
I don't know. I mean, there's something, I think they call it Visa Criolla, something like that, where it's a cultural blend, where people tend to scam. There tends to be more hyper individualism, kind of like everybody watch out for themselves. And I think it originated from the country being in poverty and from the country having a lot of instability economically, having a lot of inflation. Obviously, not everybody's like that, but I think there are some people who believe that it's justified if you need the money. I know my boyfriend in Argentina has told me many times that he's stopped robbers who have tried to rob people who are elderly or blind. And they say, but I need the money. And he would say, but it's an elderly blind person. That's not okay. You can't do that. You have to find another way, you know? So it's tough. Yeah.
So, with scams being common and like for example, the woman that you knew for months and she was ending up scamming you, and I'm not saying all instances are like this, but is it hard to make friends being abroad?
I think so. For me, it was much harder in Argentina than in Peru. Just because of the situation. In Peru, I was with a nonprofit in a small town, and it was just easier to kind of meet people from other nonprofits. And I made some really good local friends there right away. But in Argentina, it was more tough because I didn't have transportation other than an electric bike in the small town I was in, and I was living kind of outside the city. So some of the groups I joined, it was hard for me to get there to the events. And so just practical reasons. And then also there was a little bit of some weirdness. Like in the very same, for example, the same salsa group that I joined, hoping to make friends in San Rafael, a woman attempted to scam me. And I was like, really? And then another guy offered me a ride to a salsa event, and then some other people from the group messaged me and said, don't ride with him. He has like molested women in the past. So they were protecting me, and I was like, oh, joy, there's like a molester in this group, you know? There was another molester in a hiking group I joined. So partly for safety, I was a little bit cautious and yeah, just kind of stuck between not wanting to be overly paranoid. Um, I did make one good friend though in San Rafael, but then I ran into another housing scam that was pretty bad. It actually freaked me out, like for my safety. So then I moved to Buenos Aires. And so her and I aren't as connected just because I moved then to Buenos Aires, the city. Um, but yeah, she's a really awesome person. And then I did make some other friends in Buenos Aires. It took time uh, before moving back.
So I know you said that you already had to change your mindset of being not so trustworthy. So being abroad, has it changed the way you think about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
How, in
I
what ways has that changed?
Well, gosh, it's a hard question to answer, but that's okay. I'll try not to go on too many tangents.
No, we're good.
uh, yeah, so I feel like it's made me more strong having lived in Argentina. I feel like I am more creative in my thinking and ways of solving problems. They have an expression in Argentina that they say el argentino siempre resuelve, which means the Argentine always like figures out how to solve the problem, basically. So I always think that to myself, you know, whenever there's a problem in my life, like I can handle this because I have that Argentine influence inside of me. Yeah. So I think it has ultimately increased my confidence in myself. I feel like I could live in pretty much any safe Spanish speaking country and be fine and figure things out,
Yeah,
which is good.
other people that I've interviewed in the past have also said the same thing that once they moved abroad, they have saw like an increase in confidence in themselves. Um, and they typically like there's some people that I still stay in contact with, and um, they always say that when they go back home to visit family, that it is an adjustment because it's kind of they almost go back to them old like their old selves, and then when they go back abroad it's like an automatic like this is who I am, like I am confident, I can travel, I can they're more self-aware, but when they go back home it's just comfortable, and that's what they go back to doing is going back to their old self in a way. So I didn't know if that has that happened to you, like since you've been back in the US, has have you had that feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I have so many different subcultures because I lived in Phoenix for so long, and the culture there is very different than Sioux Falls, my college town. Well, you know, Midwestern culture. I love Midwestern culture. It feels very innocent to me and very safe. Phoenix is a little bit more of a showy culture, I think because of the California influence, like more in your face, more kind of look at me, a little more competitive. And so it's been really weird going back to South Dakota specifically because it feels like, okay, people move so slowly, they talk so slowly. Whereas in Buenos Aires, it's like chaos all the time and everything's so
Uh,
fast.
so kind
Yeah,
of like life has slowed down a bit.
it has slowed down. I mean, it still has its challenges. A part of me, I feel like I remember the US as being more glamorous in a lot of ways, but it still has its challenges, you know? And yeah, I definitely did not like the big city of Buenos Aires. If I move back, I want to move back to a small town in the interior. Just in general, I prefer smaller cities. Yeah, but I do think it's been really good for my confidence, and I'm sure I'll have kind of like a bicultural life
Mhm.
going forward, especially if I continue to live in different places or multicultural life.
What um what area would you be going to next? Do you know?
Well, I have a boyfriend, and him and I are kind of like this with our relationship. We're working on it over distance. If I decide to stay with him, we both want to do off-gridding, and there's a really big off-grid community in the mountains of Cordoba in Argentina. There's a lot of permaculture and bioconstruction, and we both want to be more self-sufficient. And so that is something we've talked about is
Oh,
doing that
I
life.
love that. I love that. That is so cool. So the community, does it have its own like community garden, and do you guys like is it a big community where you all have your individual housing essentially, but you come together to like eat, there's a community garden, you work together, everybody has their role in the community, or is it something
That
entirely different?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's like in the mountains, there's a bunch of little towns that are all scattered and they all have different communities.
Yeah.
I've heard one called Umapai that is like that. But I've heard others that are sort of forming organically where people just move there. Maybe they have um, an RV. They move in the RV, they build their house, they grow their food, they form a community with their neighbors. They all sort of share their food, watch each other's pets or animals if they travel. And I've watched a lot of YouTube videos on it. So has my boyfriend. We haven't been there before. He's been there to visit briefly. I've never been there. But we want to explore that.
Gotcha. Yeah. There's there was like this documentary that I watched on Netflix, and I'm not sure what country it's in. I think it's in Peru, um, or maybe Puerto Rico. I'm not entirely for sure, but it is a community like that. But when you come join the community, you have to build your own house made out of the trees and resources around you. And like the people in the community do help you with that, so you're not doing it by yourself. But then like they have their own community garden that they go to, and so they grow their own food. They have their own farm animals, um, and then each person has like their own job duties. So, somebody could go out to go fish and get like seafood for everyone. People will maintain the garden. There will be cooks, the cleaners. I mean, everyone has their own job in the community, but it all is self-sufficient. Like they have the water tanks, and they use solar panels for electricity, and I'm like, that sounds pretty awesome. Pretty awesome to have that little community.
Absolutely. What's the documentary called?
Um, I'm not for sure. I saw it a few years ago. I can probably find it and send it to you. But yeah, I think it might have been one of Zac Efron's documentaries. I don't know
Oh,
if you've seen any of his. His talks about a lot of self-sufficient and like pollution, things like that.
hmm. Zac Efron, is he the one who is he living in Argentina?
No, he
Or
actually
am I
lives in Australia now, but he is
okay.
um, he's a American actor, uh,
Okay.
and then he ended up moving to Australia because when he was doing this documentary, like his second season of it, he ended up falling in love with Australia, and I guess ended up moving there and lives there full time now. But has his own, based upon his learnings from his documentary, he has his own like self-sustaining and self-sufficient house there now.
Ooh, awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it's something to look into. I mean, I can send it to you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah, of
it.
course. Um, so with your travel experience, what what is one mistake that you've made but you want other expats to avoid?
I have a funny one that came to mind immediately. It's not funny, but it's funny. Um, so in some South American countries, they store cleaning products in water bottles. And so that can be a problem if it's a clear cleaning product. I actually, when I was in Peru, it was my first week there. There was confusion about which water was boiled and which water wasn't, and which water was for washing dishes because the water was getting turned off every other week or day, I don't remember.
Mm.
So we had water stored to wash dishes. Well, there was a water bottle sitting on the counter, and I was super thirsty. So I just grabbed it and took a big swig, and it ended up being paint thinner.
Oh no.
So I had to walk myself to the hospital, and they just pumped me full of fluids, and they gave me a stomach protectant and just said my body has to pass it. But I was like, I was told, oh, vomit, vomit, you have to vomit. And my intuition told me I probably should just go to the doctor. And so I didn't listen to the other people I was with.
Mm.
I was with another volunteer from Holland at the time. And they said that it's good that I didn't vomit because it would have mixed with my stomach acid. It would have destroyed my esophagus if I would have vomited. So I'm really glad
Yeah,
I didn't.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Just, yeah, being careful, like thinking things through, making sure the water's boiled, if it needs to be boiled, making sure you watch it yourself get boiled. Don't just trust other people in the hostel or the apartment where you're living. And then, yeah, being careful with the cleaning products that are in water bottles.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it was bizarre. My poor parents were like, oh my gosh, she only made it a week and she's already doing crazy
It's
things.
like what is it? I don't know. This type of sickness that you get in different countries, like Bali, you get Bali belly. Thailand has something else for a type of sickness that expats usually end up getting. Um, I feel like everybody that travels ends up getting something, some way within like their first week, maybe week and a half if they're not paying attention. But yeah.
Exactly.
Um, so I know you wanted to um, talk about Argentina and people that may want to move there. Um, is there anything in particular, like advice or things to avoid or look at, that you want and you want to know?
hmm Yeah, I think a lot of people are actually moving to Argentina recently, which is interesting. You know, as far as advice goes, a lot of people do struggle with housing there. It can be a little tricky. A lot of people they live in Airbnbs um, because it's easier. It can be hard to sign a lease in Argentina because you have to have something called a guarantor, which is someone who owns property in the country to basically agree to pay if you don't pay, which is really hard to get if you don't know someone in the country who owns property. And so either that or you have to buy something called seguro de caución, which is a type of insurance that basically is going to pay rent if you don't pay rent. But it's super expensive. So most people live in Airbnbs, and it's really kind of tricky to find a good Airbnb. Um, so yeah, just being strategic with that. I would recommend starting with an Airbnb, and then getting to know the locals and seeing if they can help you with things. So that way you don't get scammed as much. You don't get taken advantage of. Um, I also think that it's important to make friends with the locals as well for safety reasons. Because I've seen some people from the US who come there and they go right to like where the slum is to do something. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Don't you know that's super dangerous? And they'll host an event, there. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like my boyfriend wouldn't let me near that area, you know? And if you take the bus there, and you get off the bus and you have to walk to the event and you think, oh, I'm going to this, event, this networking event or whatever it is, and you innocently follow your GPS and you walk there, you could be walking through a really dangerous neighborhood and get robbed. So yeah, that's my main advice is get help from the locals.
Yes.
Yeah.
I yeah, I always do that. Anywhere I go, I try to connect with somebody that lives there, um, and or get advice from someone that I know that has been there, um, of places to avoid. But yeah,
That's
I totally agree connecting with locals. That's and not only that, but it's also like it's a great way to learn about the culture, and it's a great way to also learn the language in a way. And so like I don't know if it's everywhere, but typically even just learning to say hello in another language, like if you're talking to a local, their faces can just be so bright and they're so proud and happy that even like you learn to say hello. And I just love that moment, and it's yeah, and it's kind of making it like it helps make connections as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you learn how to say hello when you were in Bali or India?
Um, Bali, no. I was doing Duolingo. I started Duolingo like probably a month before I left, to get basics down. But the way Duolingo works, it doesn't teach you, and that's a problem with a lot of language apps right now, is it doesn't teach you like in a world where it's like, hi, like nice to meet you. It's more like I started learning how to say milk, or I like milk, or I like the black cat, and I'm like, this is no relevance to what I will be having a conversation with. Yeah. Um, when I went to India, I did learn a few things. I lost it, but I learned how to say nice to meet you. And I also learned how to say um, no ice, because if I got like a soda or something, I don't want to be drinking the water from the ice. Um, so I did learn how to say no ice. But yeah, I think that's important to learn some type of words before you go. And when you're in there, keep learning. Um, but yeah,
I agree.
yeah. Um, that's all the questions I had for you. But is there a way that people could find you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not, on there a lot at the moment. But I believe it's Pooja Bar Ice is my handle. I think it's Pooja and then with a underdash. And then my last name is Bareis.
Okay, and
So yeah,
is
look,
that
follow me
is
there.
that just on Instagram or?
That is- Yes.
All right. Well, that's it. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great meeting you.
You too. I'm glad we finally were able to put this together.
Me too. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Elizabeth.
Bye.